Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dancing with Damage. I'm Ian, your resident philosopher.
And I'm Abby, your resident author.
And today, we talk about the war in Iran. We are in 2026. We will talk about that and tariffs.
How fun.
Says so on the board. And we must honor the board.
Not that we've been great at that, but we're trying.
No, we are very bad at that. And it's not my fault because it sits behind me. And so how am I supposed to see what it wants? Because it doesn't speak. It can only show.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good, eh?
It's pretty good.
So on the last episode, Abby, you and I, we've gone off-piste. We've finished talking about the chapters specifically, as in the social blueprint. But a lot of what we will talk about this episode, future episodes, will be based on the philosophy of the social blueprint to provide some social commentary from the angle of that new theory and philosophy.
Indeed, we will. Last time we talked about sociopathy, which is fun. And we mentioned religion, which was kind of fun. And we sort of dabbled in war and decided it was worth its own episode. But because we're us, we also threw in tariffs because they do intermingle quite nicely with the war. And we're going to, again, talk about it through the lens of the social blueprint. So Ian, how would you like to start us off?
Well, I should apologize because last episode, I didn't want it to get too long or convoluted. I have a habit of sort of branching off in many directions at once. And then sometimes we don't
Say anything.
say anything at all. It's like if you had a pen with 5 nibs.
Oh, you mean like those fun pens? I got one when I was 10. I forget why. I think I got an A on something. And you push the color down and that color is what you write with. And there's 10 or 15 colors all the way around. And just to decide which color pen you use, you push down that little nib on the side that's color coded. It was so cool.
Yes, the retract-a-bit of pens. But you can imagine if all the pen colors were down at the same time.
I don't think that's possible with the one I'm thinking of, but
No,
that would be chaotic.
It wouldn't be, but imagine if it could all be done at once and then you tried to write something, it would be illegible, but colorful. And so when we try and talk about too many things in one episode, it's probably like that. But we thank you for your interest and stick with us because we enjoy seeing you. And why I'm bringing that up is because last episode, I sort of didn't want to go into any discussion of the tariffs or how the war was doing in Iran.
Despite that being the entire premise.
Yes, sometimes I do that, but do not fear, because this time we will now go into a little bit of depth to that. Abby has some good insight on that. I'm always interested in learning from her researchings because I live under a rock, as we established last time. I am like
Patrick. The starfish.
Patrick the SpongeBob starfish.
So Ian, let's dive right in. War, what is it good for?
A segue into what I wanted to talk about anyway.
I would have also accepted absolutely nothing.
No, I wanted to. Don't worry, the music reaches me under the rock. Faintly, I hear its vibrations. So I just want to wrap up what we talked about last time real quick. We were talking about President Trump in the United States. And of course, the theory of damage that we have is that if enough people in a country are damaged, the government and the nation influenced by the government becomes damaged. And what a great example. I mean, there are many reasons to criticize that administration, but I can definitely thank him for giving a very good example of how a damaged leadership can arise out of a damaged population. You were talking a bit about how the religious base in America seems to be the voting power behind that administration. And so we talked a bit about those 3 fish and how it's good to treat religion like the fish that bites around the hook, eats the worm, and doesn't adopt the damaged facets of religion that are sort of exclusionary and unhelpful, and instead adopt the positive things about religion, which I think the Pope was talking about this Easter weekend. So, having said that, Abby, we were talking about why the war showed damaged policy. What do you say about this?
It does.
Such insight. Now, let's move on to the next topic. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it'd be savage. That would be a very misleading conversation.
Now let's remember, a damaged society will exhibit policy that's not in the best interests of the country that it is conducted for. So Abby, why would you say the war in Iran is not in the best interest of the nation for which it was brought about?
This is all my opinion, obviously, because we're not professionals on war. Well, I don't know what you know, but I'm not a professional on war. It appears to me that they're not sure if they can classify it as a war. They keep saying it's a military operation, but then they say it is a war, and then they have a Department of War, which is very misleading because one of the tenets that President Trump was elected on was that he was a peacetime leader and he didn't want to start any wars. And coming hot on the heels of Venezuela, it appears to many that this is sort of a financial gain operation where he's attempting to have some control over oil. If you remember a couple months ago, which was dramatic and quite a statement to make, I feel, internationally, that you can go into somebody else's country and just steal their resources and then no one says anything. To me, that was a very pivotal moment, but he sort of glided past that. And it feels to me as though this is just a personal gain thing. And it's been very confusing and stressful for everybody because gas prices have risen, obviously, which means that literally everything else that has to be transported in any capacity is more expensive. They were actually doing a side-by-side on, I want to say CBC, but I could be wrong. And it was really interesting. It was showing Easter chocolate prices. They took Cadbury as an example because it's an English brand. It's very high quality chocolate, very beloved. And they showed 3 different years, 2024, 2025, and 2026, and what the Easter comparable was and the price. And it was crazy to me because it was almost 500 grams of chocolate in 2024. It was like 460 or something like that. And it was $12. And in 2026, it was like 300 grams, so almost 200 grams less of chocolate, which is like 40-ish% less chocolate, but it was $19 for the same thing, essentially. And it was kind of crazy just to see the inflation within 2 years. So it feels like everything is more expensive. They're not saying it's a war because Congress has not said it's a war, but they don't seem to care what Congress thinks at all. And there seem to be no repercussions for ignoring Congress. So what is the point of Congress? I don't know. I am genuinely curious as to how anything works in America because people seem to say the Supreme Court says you can't do that. And then the government says, oh, well, we're going to do it anyway. Or Congress says you can't do that. And then the government goes, we don't care. And then there's no repercussions. So it's just very chaotic and stressful, and it's unclear when it's going to end because everyone says, we beat them, and then they're blowing up American planes, warships, I don't know what you call them. I guess warships would be on the sea, but American fighter jets. So it's very convoluted and unclear, and I think the lack of transparency and the lack of a clear goal and the lack of a timeline is exacerbating everything. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it'd be pretty good if the Navy was flying over the airspace of Iran and potentially, obviously we don't want them to be shot down, but that would be quite a sight. You can imagine a huge destroyer. It's doing the sonar thing. We're not getting anything, Captain. The sonar's not working. It's like, but we picked up a seagull. I guess they would have seagulls actually anyway at sea, so that's a bad example. Watch out for that hot air balloon. No. What do I think? What do I think about the war in Iran? Well, we did talk about this in the social blueprint. We talked specifically about foreign military intervention in civil conflict. So let's assume, just for the sake of it, that America has taken military action against Iran to change the regime and improve things for the people in Iran.
Maybe, yeah.
You know, the evidence doesn't point to that as the goal or anything like that, but let's just assume for a second we'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Just as an aside, do you remember the interview that was given where they're like, is this a regime change? And he's like, no. And they said, okay, who's going to take over? And he goes, well, there was a guy, but he's dead. And then there was another guy, and he's dead. And then our third favorite guy is also dead. So he's listing all the people he hoped took over the regime. And he's like, but we killed them all.
Yeah, so again, probably not the true mission and intent behind the operation. But let's just give them the most benefit of the doubt possible, the American administration, and give them the greatest leeway there. The issue is, there was a conflict in the Middle East not too long ago with President Bush. It was the Iraq War. Went on for some time, I think until, I want to say 2003. And even though many, many billions of dollars were spent on that, it sort of reminds us of, let's say you had a house fire.
Okay.
And you took some diamonds and you threw them on the flames.
Okay.
Now, the flames went down a little bit because the diamonds smothered.
I just had ample diamonds lying around in this imaginary scenario.
Boxes of diamonds were dumped. Because sometimes you can put sand on fire. You don't, not light it on fire. You can place sand on fire to extinguish it.
So we are now De Beers, just in this scenario?
Well, imagine if instead of sand, you took boxes of diamonds and threw it a bit on the fire. Well, it wouldn't put out the fire entirely, and it wouldn't do very much, but it did cost a lot to do.
Yeah.
And so when we look at the results of the Iraq War, it's sort of like the logic of the diamond fire extinguisher, in that you can see Iraq now, three things are wrong and sort of uphold our philosophy of minimalist military intervention in civil conflicts. Number one, Iraq is still very corrupt, and quality of life is really not that much better. Number two, the massive price tag that was spent not only on the military operation of the Iraq War, but also putting out the fires of Al-Qaeda and the other terrorist groups that sprung from it. You know, could those resources have been put to better use in global stability? And number three, as we argue in the social blueprint, the Iraqi people haven't truly developed, in our opinion, an immune system to corruption. And so it's much more likely that in a few years' time, whatever perceived stability has created itself, because there now is elections in Iraq, that's granted, but in our estimation, it's likely that will falter very soon because there's no true constitution or immune system to corruption in that country that's actually going to help move it forward.
And aren't there still active, I don't know, cells of the terrorist organizations, the ones you mentioned? Are they still not internationally active? They haven't been obliterated. They exist in some capacity.
Yes, I would say that's true. I mean, you look at Yemen and Somalia and these sort of places. But unfortunately, the way Iraq has turned out, it sort of actually reminds us a little bit more how the States is now. So it might have moved away from a tyrant just to move to, you know, the robber baron sort of capitalist nightmare that America sort of has become now.
Well, if you look at Iran, they technically have a democratic process. They did have an election when the last leader was taken down, but it is the son of the previous leader. And I find it hard to believe that it was a truly democratic process, that somebody who is so close to somebody who was considered to be a tyrant and a bad leader would be elected, because what qualifications does he have? As far as I understand, he has not distinguished himself from his father and proven to be a just and moral leader.
Right. So yeah, going back to Iran, which is what we're of course talking about, I think I see what you're saying, Abby. Even if a democracy at the end of this war forms in Iran, and I think our position in the social blueprint is this still is not a sufficient, it's not a sufficient payout. Again, we're looking for damage policy in America, so we still can argue it's a very damaged policy to start attacking Iran in 2026, because even if the best case scenario happens, which is not that great, it hasn't benefited the American people. And especially when you look at the price tag, I mean, that's huge. The reality is that the foreign spending of a country, especially a superpower like America, isn't infinite. It has to be spent wisely if you want to create global security. And global security, let's bear in mind, is positive for America. That's an argument you could make. Just like if all the houses in your neighborhood are safe and not full of drug dealers and arsonists and thieves.
And murderers.
Murder. Well,
Believe it or not, he's a lawyer and he does do trials.
I thought you were going to say, and does do drugs.
No, God, no. We're very anti-recreational things in this house. Recreational substances.
Any recreation.
No, recreational
We don't
substances.
swim.
No,
we don't jog.
we do
One time I
healthy things.
speed walk. She took me out. Boom.
That's not funny.
No, that's not funny. How could she catch up to me? I was speed walking.
He's so tall. Yeah.
Yeah. So you want every neighborhood and every neighbor in your neighborhood to be well-adjusted, positive, yeah, so that you can be better in your neighborhood. So all that to say, the war in Iran, it's difficult to argue that it's not a damaged policy in our view. And so, again, going back to the Trump administration, it's a strong argument for a sociopathic administration that is indifferent to that and has a personal agenda. And again, we sort of feel sorry for anybody who's trapped in a sociopathic behavior pattern because it shows great damage, great subconscious guilt, and that person will never have true positive connections.
Or real happiness.
Or fundamental happiness. It's especially sad when you consider, Abby, what was that Spider-Man, probably the most famous Spider-Man quote? What would you say that is?
Oh, gosh.
No, the answer we're looking for was that fly, you've got a fly in your arm.
No, it's with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh, that's it. Yes. That is the old expression, great power comes great responsibility. It reminds us, actually, we were talking about religion last time. There's a quote in the Bible about Jesus, main character of the Bible. It's not a trilogy.
The New Testament, he's the main character. In the Old Testament, not really featured.
No, I never liked those prequels kind of thing. I was like, I don't know, because here's the thing. I think the New Testament has many Gospels. Abby and I have really only read the 4.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah.
They're kind of the key ones. And it's kind of fun to compare them and say, well, from this perspective, it looks like Jesus did this, but from this perspective, Jesus did that. It's like, who's telling the truth? Who's right? It's more of a historical
Hodgepodge. But there is a story in there about Jesus, and Jesus was funny. He was always doing crazy stuff like this. I think he was telling a story, but you could tell he probably did it at some point. People went up to him, and, the story is that Jesus gave one guy 10 coins, another guy 5 coins, another guy 1 coin, all according to their merit. And the first guy went and invested the money, came back with another 10 coins on top of it.
I thought this was a story Jesus told about a landowner or a farmer who gave the coins.
I mean, that's what they say now, but I think Jesus was up there handing out dineros, as he does. Social experiment.
Okay. But I think in the Bible, it was not Jesus doing the money lending.
I like to think he was.
Okay. But anyway, the guy with 10 coins went out and he invested it and made 10 more coins.
What a side hustle. Can you imagine if you were Jesus and then you could just send people out to bring you back money, and if they did, you'd pat them on the head? Because that's how it goes. The guy who gave 10 coins to comes back with 10 more. Great return.
20 coins.
If I could get that return on investment in a bank nowadays, that would be fantastic. So, and then the next guy is given 5 coins, comes back with 5 more, so 10 in total. Gets another pat in the head. Last guy buries his coin, so it's safe, but then digs it up, brings it back, and basically says, well, I only have 1 coin. And the man in the story, I think it's Jesus. No, I don't think it is. But anyway, is all upset and banishes the guy, probably takes the coin back. The guy, it's just no chance, this guy. And the moral of the story is, if you have talents, or like that Spider-Man quote, if you have power, you should try to
Do good with it.
do as much as you have at least. So it is sad to see arguably the most powerful person in the world, the President of the United States, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the American military, which is the most powerful military force that the world has or has seen, squander it so much. It's like if someone fell from a skyscraper or fell from a stepping stool. They both have fallen, but because someone had such elevation, they hit the ground that much harder when they are damaged and One thing we talk about in the book, Abby, what is one of the pillars at play in Act 3 that might, reminds us of this a bit?
I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
There are so many pillars.
There are so many pillars.
We are pillarific.
Pillar-tastic?
Oh, wait. I think there are at least 4 pillars. So in French, that would be a quatre pillar.
It's going to turn into a butter pun fly.
A better fly. Yeah. I don't know why Abby stays with me. But no, what I want to say is, didn't we have a pillar at play that was important, that any policy should deny damaged people?
The power to injure?
Yes.
Yes, and there were 5 pillars. I thought there were 5, and then you made me question myself because you said quatre pillar to make your terrible, terrible pun.
The joke wouldn't have worked. So I indeed changed the number of pillars. Worth it. So, yeah, I mean, that's why we argue for the school of ruling. It's very unlikely that this sort of thing would have happened with that sort of system. But anyway, what else can we say about the war?
I would just say that while war rarely can have the potential to do some good, if the alternative is so bad, the fact that there's no direction, everything is costing more money internationally, especially in the States. Iran already has some kind of a democratic-ish system because they have elections already. And despite the fact that they took out the bad guy, allegedly, someone who is poised to be just as bad, if not worse, because he's younger and has a better, understanding of society going on today. His father was very elderly. And unfortunately, when you get to that age, you have a limit to what you can do. Although, I stand to be corrected, because apparently President Trump is 80 or going to be 80, which is crazy. I didn't realize he was so advanced in his life. So it's not helping the government situation. It's not helping the corruption situation. It's not attacking any terrorist or extremist groups. It's not bringing down the price of oil, which is already a scarce resource and is already very costly to the environment to bring up. So wasting any of it is a disaster for the climate, and he's harming the general people of the country. So for Iran, it's a no-win situation. For America, everyone's confused. There's no direction of where it's going. There's no confirmation about when it's ending, if it's even started, what they're calling it. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. I can't see any benefit other than trying to make people forget about the Epstein files, try to make people forget about Venezuela, and try to distract people from all the other negative things that are happening, like the fact, in part to pay for this war or not war, he took away immense social services from people who need them, like access to food stamps. He cut that. He also cut medical and dental care for those who are the most impoverished in the country. And then, I don't know, it feels manipulative and it feels self-serving and it makes me feel icky. So I don't like it.
War. That is what it is. Icky. Icky indeed. So there you go. That is our take on the war based on the theory in the social blueprint. Now, Abby, do we dare get into tariffs this episode, or would you like to talk about that in the next episode?
It's on the board. I can be more succinct with tariffs.
Yes. Well, let us find out. Let us put her to the test, shall we? So, again, we are raising some of these issues because it's sort of a silent voice. When you turn on the news and you listen to many opinions out there about these subjects, Abby and I have noticed there's a real lack of a cohesive, logical explanation for these sort of things. And that's why we really like the theory of damage, because as a self-destructive force, if you understand the thought process there, it makes sense that a self-destructive people, as they now are because of unmoderated technology, and certainly more than they were historically, the American people have intentionally brought about a government in order to make their quality of life worse. It's the only way you can really rationalize it, because to say that the American people couldn't have foreseen the reduction in their quality of life and the suffering they would experience at the hands of a clearly sociopathic, incompetent leader.
In our view.
Yeah, and it's not meant to be insulting.
Though it sounds it.
I can admit that one time I had to drive a very large truck. It was like a pickup truck. It was so big. And I was incompetent at it. I was not good. But if, after having seen me drive it, someone had been like, we want you to drive that really fast down a crowded street, you know, I would say I am incompetent. I shouldn't be doing that.
But it takes a level of health or a lack of damage to be able to admit when you do something wrong. A lot of people, the more heavily damaged they are, the more willfully blind. So it would never be able to admit it. But I want to accept your challenge on tariffs, and I would like to address them.
Oh, yes.
I don't know why you're talking about killing people with vehicles.
Because I'm just saying it's no insult to accurately label, I think, what's going on in the States. But most people are not hesitant about their opinions. So tariffs, is it a damaged policy?
Yes. A tariff is supposed to stop you from buying things from other countries when you could buy them from local vendors instead, so that you're prioritizing buying intranationally instead of internationally. But as I've said in a previous discussion, it takes years, if not decades, to create industry in a country because of just how long the process takes. It's irrefutable. So imposing so many tariffs on things that are not already made in the States, are not able to be made in the States, or things that are not made anywhere near a scale that's required in the States. And to take, for example, the auto industry, a lot of parts are sent away to be modified or rejigged and then sent back, or some pieces are imported. So even though there is an auto industry in the States, many steps along the process of making that car are requiring other countries, are exported and imported. So putting tariffs on products when there aren't already viable alternatives that would not be hit by tariffs are not effective. It's just costing people more money. And the thing is, the cost of the tariffs goes to the American people. It's not like other countries are paying a fee to import their products. It just means less people will buy their products, which does suck, but it doesn't impact the countries as much because they can just export their goods to other countries. But the people importing the products are the ones who pay the tariff, and it just goes to the government. So it's been very unclear where all of this money the tariffs have brought in or is going to. Is it just going to pay the politicians? I don't know. That's my theory, because I don't understand how they can all be so wealthy when the government is not meant to be such a lucrative position. And the people of the States are not seeing much benefit from the tariff prices. So basically everything's costing 20 to 50 to sometimes more than 100% more than it normally would. They don't have reprieve. They're not getting any of the tariff money back. And they don't have alternative products to buy that don't involve tariffs, because pretty much everything in the States is either imported or in part imported. So the price has and will continue to go up. So it's a no-win situation for anybody. What would you like to add?
Well, just that we know from historical experience that the stock market relies a lot on confidence, and investment in business relies on confidence in upward progression, which makes sense when you think about it. So if you wanted to buy a dog, a puppy, let us say, we have some puppies, and we had to put a deposit, I think, on the corgi, Archie.
Yeah, you have to promise you're going to actually adopt them. So you give them money in advance, non-refundable. That's how they get you. That's
how they get you. But if you didn't have any confidence that you would get the dog after the deposit, a lot of people wouldn't put down the deposit at all, and the dog would just sit there and be very sad. And so, of course, I agree with Abby that all this erodes confidence in business, and that seems to be an underpinning of what is likely going to be a downward decline of economic productivity, which is a big problem, not in and of itself, but remember, it's the economy that is the fuel of the car of policy. All policy has a massive price tag. So it's a real shame for the upward momentum of any society when the gas is out of the tank, because then even if there's a good driver behind the wheel, hypothetically, the car still can't go anywhere. But one thing I wanted to end on is I was thinking about another example. I'm really bad at singing, right? Abby, why do you smile?
I'm remembering how you proposed to me and how everyone in the restaurant told me I shouldn't have said yes.
Yikes. And they were not wrong. That was very poorly warbled. So I accept that I'm a very bad singer. I don't think I've sang very much since I proposed to Abby. I thought it would be a romantic gesture because, you know, they always say it's the thought that counts, but it's like, no. I think you need a thought
And then some talent.
and a delivery. Very important. So yeah, I sing badly. I'm just very, very bad at it. And so anybody who hires me to be the main event at a fundraiser, like a concert, shouldn't, you know, they be expecting that they're not going to do very well at the fundraiser because I'm such a bad singer. And so it's the same thing that we know that damage is real and alive in the States because it's like asking me to be in your concert. And the only explanation is, at some level, the people didn't want, people organizing the fundraiser, they didn't want the success of the concert. So anyway, that's another way to think about it. I really like what you said there, Abby. I think we have gone over those policies. I think it's pretty easy to establish that they meet the criteria of a damaged policy, i.e. a policy is enacted by a nation, but it doesn't meet the criteria of love, certainly.
No.
It doesn't really even apply a short-term sacrifice for the long-term best interests of the country. It is certainly an easy thing to implement, a selfish thing in the short term to implement that's going to have long-term negative consequences for the nation. It fits the category of damage policy, and that's where that is. And a great example of what can happen if we don't address the underlying issue of societies in the developed world that have been exposed to unmoderated technology, and damage has basically fried the ability for a nation to act in its own best interests.
Essentially, what we're getting at, I know we said a lot of words. Thank you for having fun with us. Essentially, if a policy is made that's supposed to be for the benefit of people but doesn't meet those criteria, it's damage. And we are talking about policies that up front don't look like they would derive any benefit. And since then, have shown to have the exact opposite effect where they're harming people at a dramatic rate internationally. This is now a global problem and nothing is being done to address it. And the longer this problem continues, the more it's exacerbated, the more severe the damage, and the longer it's going to take to recover from this. So I'm not sure what the solution is. I don't know where this is going, but I'm nervous. And I think talking about it helps, but it's not a good situation to be in. So we'll keep monitoring it and let you know if we have any future insight, but it's definitely a problem.
Definitely a problem. And if we're right, as we feel the evidence shows we are, then it's not just going to be America of the developed countries that start showing symptoms of heavily, heavily damaged leadership. It's going to certainly spread. And we do see that. We see as the older generation dies off, the young generation coming up in a lot of developed countries is
iPad kids, essentially.
Right. Very unpredictable.
Sort of raised in a me first, you second world as opposed to you first, me second world. Very instant gratification, only focused on what impacts them specifically and not really caring about how their actions or actions of the world impact anybody else. Yeah, it's not ideal.
No. So as those people reach majority and voting age, I think we're going to see a mirror reflection of what's happening in the States. So having said that, thank you for tuning in. Turn yourselves in. Apparently you have to, because I said that. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time.
Have a great day.